So Apple stock showing signs of life after struggling through the first part of 2025 as the tariff-related risks weighed down on the company start to ease. Let's get more with Angelo Zino. He is the Senior Equity Analyst at CFRA Research. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thanks for having me.
What has given Apple this ability to bounce back? Is it the latest quarter results or the promise to invest more in the U.S. or both?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Apple is, what we've told investors is we expect them to kind of climb this wall of worry, right? And if you kind of look at the most recent move, I think, of all the points that you just mentioned, it is absolutely the extra $100 billion investment that they've made or committed into the U.S. And that really has improved their relationship with the Trump administration. I think investors have applauded that significantly. I also think it also reduces or essentially alleviates the risk tied to tariffs in many respects. I mean, they were going to be under this 232 semiconductor investigation, which we're still waiting on the details for. But at this point in time, the Trump administration and Apple striking that greater partnership together, we think it essentially alleviates the risk of any kind of significant tariffs being imposed on Apple from the existing levels that they're paying at this point in time.
That being said, the door hasn't exactly closed in the sense that China and the U.S. haven't worked out their trade agreement yet. And it's the investments in China by Apple that have been a problem for Donald Trump. So what is the company doing about that?
Yeah, I mean, so, interestingly, it seems like, Apple is increasing their investments into India, and that is more of kind of Apple looking to just further diversify their supply chain here over the next couple of years and really de-risk away from China. And there was a point in time where the Trump administration definitely frowned upon Apple increasing their investments in India. But at this point in time, given the extra $100 billion investments that we've seen them commit into the U.S., it seems like right now the Trump administration is okay with that. So that's how really Apple is kind of combating some of the risks tied to the U.S.-China relationship out there. They do still have, they're still going to continue to be very deeply entrenched inside of China. As that productivity within China is going to support the rest of the global needs for Apple. But as far as the U.S. needs are concerned, expect within the next 2 years or so, all those needs to really come from India.
What about its AI strategy? There was concern that they didn't really have one. They weren't sort of doing their own thing with AI. Has Apple at all clarified the road ahead for AI and its use on Apple products?
Yeah, I mean, so Apple hasn't clarified it at this point in time, but, listen, they've essentially doubled down on the fact that, hey, listen, we're going to get this right next year. Our belief is that by the time we hit the developers conference in June of next year, they're going to have a strategy in place. It's a must for Apple. And again, they've got all the money in the world to throw at this. When you kind of look at some of the speculation that is out there, especially most recently, it looks like they are working on an extended partnership with Google and their Gemini platform. We think that makes all the sense in the world, and that is kind of where we think that the greatest likelihood is. And as you kind of see greater Siri integration out there, whether it be Gemini or even potentially an OpenAI or what have you, ultimately, that at the very least is a stopgap and helps Apple really kind of deliver on the commitment that it originally provided back in 2024 to developers and consumers out there. So that is really the key point right now. We do expect them to deliver. And then ultimately that has potential positive implications to the demand landscape in terms of their iPhones, as well as potential greater services revenue through that app ecosystem.
So, Angelo, as you know, the stock is still down about 9% over the year. Some of the other Mag 7 stocks have bounced back incredibly from April and gone on to new highs. Because AI is not invested in AI the way some of those other companies are and will greatly benefit from that, do you think this is going to be the trend forward for Apple, where it'll always just sort of lag behind the others?
That's a really interesting comment and question. But when we think about it, when you think about the growth trajectory of Apple here, longer term, it's probably below that of the most of the other Mag 7 names, just kind of given their revenue levels at this point in time, and just given exactly what they do relative to what the others do out there. But I will tell you this right now: when you think about the free cash flow generation of it, they're more asset light business. They're able to generate and give more back to consumers. That is, helping boost their earnings trajectory. They're also doing a lot in terms of improving the margin trajectory of the business. When we think about kind of going into late 2026, the fall of 2026, at that point, you do have AI, right? We do expect them to have foldable devices as well. They improved kind of the story in China, we think, overall. So this is probably going to be more an on-off or off-year type of thing at points in times where you're going to see times where Apple will outperform some of the other Mag 7 names, others like this year where they will underperform. But maybe to your point, they don't have the type of AI story that some of the other Mag 7 names. So the risk reward, we think, remains favorable because there's less downside risk, but ultimately maybe less upside relative to the other Mag 7 names.
Yeah, they have been looked at by many consumers saying they haven't really advanced their product line very much. There hasn't been sort of the latest and greatest thing that has made consumers say, I have to have that next phone. You mentioned foldables. What else do they have on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it is a combination of foldables, and I do think it is the fact that they do get the AI story right. You do that, you get the combination of that by the time you hit the fall of next year. Those are the two components that we think, especially in China, that the China consumer really wants. And China has been kind of a headwind for Apple here over the last 2 years, and also a sentiment killer for many investors. So if they can kind of get those two stories right and they roll out at exactly the same time, again, we think that helps improve, and we're not looking for much here this fall with the iPhone 17 cycle, although, there is an iPhone Air that will likely come out. It is more that iPhone 18 cycle and the capabilities they get with that. And ultimately, there are going to be revenue opportunities tied to services where that remains really kind of the growth story tied to Apple.
Got it. Angelo Zino, I've got to leave it there. Angelo, Senior Equity Analyst at CFRA Research. Thanks for your time.